chance for us to talk how to make the best of our internship experience. So some of you are going to be new. This is your first internship. Some of y'all might have a question, like, how to be a rock star. So we're going to first introduce our wonderful my two friends, and then we'll talk a little more about that. Sound good? So with that said, what is your story? Tell us, and whoever wants to go first.
Hi everyone, my name is Angela Nguyen, and I grew up and was raised in the Bay Area. And I attended, does everyone know where Evergreen Valley High School is? Yeah? Is everyone pretty much from San Jose? Or
Oh, they're national. They're from all over the country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, New York, Texas, I heard, Midwest.
Very diverse. Okay, well I'll tell you. Well, I went to Evergreen Valley High School, and then when I was in high school, I was pretty involved with like nonprofit work. So I'm pretty sure if Anthony, I'm not sure if Anthony talked to you about ACTI, Asian Americans for Community Involvement. They have a lot of great services, a lot of programs for the youth. So I did a lot of like programs in high school, and then I just felt like I wanted to give back and to learn more about the community. So I decided to study political science, and I studied at University of California, Davis. And I got my degree in Asian American Studies and Political Science. And then actually in high school, I was kind of exposed to civic engagement. So the congresswoman, at the time, she had a student advisory board, and I applied to be a member of the student advisory board, and I got into the program. So it actually came full circle. And after college, I wanted to go back to my hometown and to kind of like understand the community more after having a perspective through college and to understand all the issues. And when I came back, I became her staff assistant, and then I moved my way up to become her scheduler in congressional aid. And currently in this position, I manage her schedule. So everything that she does at the district office, I coordinate for her. And then what that entails is like I prepare all of these documents for her, so she knows exactly where she goes. And then my issue areas are education, immigration, and community outreach. So that's where I am now.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Juliana. I currently work for Assemblymember Evan Lowe in his district office in Cupertino. So I, kind of like some of you, I'm not from California originally. I grew up in Northern Virginia in Fairfax County. I went through K through 6 there, and then I moved to Southern California where I went to middle and high school in Irvine, California. And then I actually went to school at UC Riverside in Southern California. So you might be wondering, how did I get up here? In high school, I was involved kind of at the local level with a lot of volunteering, but it wasn't really until undergrad that I kind of sunk my teeth in. So I don't know, what age group are we in? Are we in high school?
High school all the way to graduate school.
Okay, awesome. Well, I was not as, I wasn't going to these sort of conferences, seizing these sort of opportunities in high school, so kudos to all of you. So in undergrad, I kind of wanted something beyond my my morning shifts at Starbucks. I was a barista, worked my way up to student supervisor, but I was studying public policy and I wanted hands-on experience. And so I applied to the UC-DC internship program. So the UCs, if you go to a UC, there's sort of a sister campus over in Washington, DC, where you can intern for a quarter. You're still enrolled as a UC student, but you get to essentially live your entire quarter in Washington, DC. So you could work and intern full-time really anywhere. I interned on the Hill for Congressman Mark Takano. And so that was a really incredible experience for me because I was just finishing up undergrad, but I had the opportunity to get that hands-on experience while still being a student. I had a lot of mentors that helped kind of guide me after that experience, and so when I came back to finish my degree, I kind of wanted to keep moving with the momentum, and so I actually interned in Congressman Takano's district office in Riverside, and so I was kind of on this internship role, if you will, and I think each opportunity opened up new doors for me, and so with my mentor's direction, I decided to apply for a fellowship in the state capitol. And then I was placed in then Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom's office. And he's now Governor of California. I was there for about 5 months, and it was sort of my first exposure to an executive office, really high stakes office, if you will. At the time, he was running for governor, so there was a lot of attention given to his current role as lieutenant governor. And I thought after that fellowship, when it was over, that I would be working sort of in a pretty ivory, state capitol building. But just for fun, I noticed an opportunity in a district office out here in Cupertino for Assembly Member Evan Lowe. So I noticed that he was kind of like a mover and shaker in the state legislature. For fun, came out here to interview. Obviously, I prepared, but I thought, what could I lose by driving out, 120 miles? Let's do it. Did the thing. One interview turned into 3, and before I knew it, I moved out to South Bay and kind of planted the first of my career experience here. And so, long story short, I met Anthony and Angela actually through my work. Mr. Lowe is a CLP, a Poly alum himself, and so he, really tries to open those doors for his staff. And so that's why I'm here today, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion.
Awesome, thank you so much. So I always forget how much we talk in lingos and slang and stuff, right, in terms of vernacular. So for those who are curious, UCs are University of California. It's a public system. That's obviously in California. A Poly is actually what I work for, and a Poly is outsourced here to be the trainers. And it stands for Asian Pacific American Leadership Institute. And we do a lot of training for those who are nonprofit, public service, civic engagement. Like I said earlier, we're like the worst kept secret. People seem to know about us when they talk about it, but they don't realize that we're such, big movers, or we learn how to empower people really well. And the last one is CLP, is our adult program, usually the adult program. It's a civic leadership program. So those are adults who come in, adults. Those who are like maybe second year to third year in college, all the way to like 80-year-olds who want to really make an impact, whether they run for a school board, run for office, or find new ways to get engaged in the community. Right. So I just want to get that information there. But with that said, thank you again. So one big question I've sent to you all, and one question that may be useful, and by the way, you all can ask questions too, is what was it like or is it like to work in an elected government office?
So working in an elected government office, the best advice I'd tell you is it's always constantly changing. Like every day is not really much the same. Like sometimes there's, you have to take care of inside the office more, or there's more events, so it fluctuates. And when you intern for an elected official, you get exposed to a lot of members of the community and the different organizations that are out there. Because as an elected official member, they have to go to events and to understand the community more. So as an intern, you understand the different issues that are out there. And also professionalism, you'll be able to understand more of how working in a professional office is. When you're in an office, like you have to come on time and be ready. And when the member is there, it's just you have to make sure to do the different things that you need in the office. And
I think going off of that, really understanding that you're serving the community that maybe your member or elected official represents is a really important thing to kind of put in the front of your mind every day that you walk in. That when you step into those doors, you are representing more than just yourself. You're representing another elected member, maybe the U.S. Congress, maybe the state assembly, the state of California, whatever it may be. And so your actions, your mannerisms, your tone, all of that reflects that. I always instruct sort of our intern team, if they're talking to someone that might be a little bit more passionate or maybe even a little bit upset with them, that I like to use the phrase, you know my name, not my story. And so for them, you might be the first person that they've talked to all month. But for you, that might be like your 50th call that week. And so I think professionalism, definitely just being really mindful of everyone's sort of different backgrounds and understanding that you represent more than just yourself. I think on the outside looking in, sometimes people look at elected office and they think that it's really glamorous. And I'm here to dispel that myth. It's really not. Members, no matter where they stand, I think that we don't give them enough credit. Sometimes they don't have time to use the restroom, right? After events, people vlog them and take photos and they want to give them their comments, but sometimes all they need is a 2-minute window just to slip out and use the restroom. And they don't want to do that because the way that other people perceive that is, oh, they're leaving, they're trying to sneak out of here. I think another thing is, it's like sometimes you notice staffers will kind of like run and go grab water, or are we switching the mics?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Sometimes you'll notice that staffers will run around and grab things like water or a plate of fruit, or they might ask for a cup of coffee. And I think the misconception is that, ooh, the member is like this VIP, but really it's like sometimes that's the first sip of water they've had all day. And so when you're representing a member, it's so key to know that their success is the success of who they represent, their community.
So thank you both for that. So just a show of hands, how many of y'all is this your first internship? Curious. Raise an eye, raise an eye. Okay, and that's good to know. Second time? Second internship? Third? And fourth? Awesome. Okay, and it's good to know. So there's definitely a varying level of experience there. I'm glad to see that. Which leads to my next question. What are the common expectations of interns? Do they change over the years? Are they consistent for every single one? Tell us.
Okay, so when we have interns at the office, just starting from the interview process, we expect professionalism, like you would wear business clothes. Your appearance matters a lot in working for like a congressional office or just any elected official office, because like Julia said, your appearance, it represents the appearance of the member. And for our interns, usually we have to be cognizant of time and deadlines, because a lot of different staffers in the office, they already have so much to handle. And then when we assign an intern project, we expect interns to just follow the deadlines and what we ask of them. And something that we expect is like when we give you a project, we expect interns to show initiation as well. So not only just doing the bare minimum, but your original ideas, we take you on because of your original ideas and what you had to offer. So we all know that interns that apply and you get selected to these offices is you have a really ample of experience already. You have a good education, and you want to be there. So to show that you want to be at an office when you have the position to be at the office, that's something that's key. And in elected official offices, there's a lot of people that come in and come out. Constituents, we deal with so many different people to kind of like understand how to treat people and always reflect on the office. That's something that's key. And when you're an intern, sometimes like you kind of want to do, you expect to do bigger projects, but then as an intern, kind of to understand like it's important to do menial tasks. That's something that we kind of look out for, and staying alert and being proactive, because there's so much that's going on, and that's what we expect of interns.
And to add on to that, I think in the interview process, even if it's like your very first interview ever. Usually we can tell, and so I think coming prepared is key. You can be nervous, that's allowed, we're all human, but I think you can tell when someone's nervous and unprepared and when someone's nervous and prepared. And so that's sort of the expectation. Our office, we don't expect you to come knowing everything. That's what being an intern is all about. Each day is a new training. Each day is you practicing and improving the skills that you learned the last time you were inside interning. Professionalism always, like I sort of alluded to earlier, just the way that you carry yourself really shows people are watching you in kind of like a not creepy way, they're watching you. When you come out to events and help your team, or even when you're answering the door, if someone comes in to visit the office, I always say that it's kind of like a customer service role in a way, but constituent correspondence and having that relationship with people that we serve is very similar. But I always sort of instruct our intern team that your job is not to make them feel like the constituent is always right, but your job is really to make each moment right for them, because they will remember your interaction. I think another expectation is kind of like how Angela alluded to, like knowing your place as an intern is really important. And that's not to say like, oh no, you're at the bottom of the barrel, but know that other staffers, even maybe your chief of staff, even sometimes your member, they started as an unpaid volunteer intern. And so they did what you might be doing. Maybe you're doing like a really menial task, or you're tired of picking up the mail, or tired of talking to the 10th person on the phone that day. But I think it's really important to remember that staff would never ask you to do something that they themselves wouldn't do. That's a huge expectation that we uphold. I think that we really expect our interns also to come in with a really open mind. So just because you're tasked with something and it doesn't seem like it's going to contribute to your growth now, I think there's always a method to learning that skill, because I think we could both agree that any skill that you learn or improve in a legislative office or even a public official office, whatever it may be, that's really transferable to any sector. Whether you go private, whether you become a doctor, work for NASA, you name it.
Now, just to add on to that, just think of it as like a training, because when you're an intern, you're just trying to be open-minded and just to see how an office operates, and just be alert and stay alert and see how the office operates, and whatever task is asked of you, just be more than willing and happy to do it. And then when the higher ups, they see that you have that sort of initiation, the hard work, they will assign you more things. So you have to show that you can do the smaller tasks to be assigned the bigger tasks. So that's kind of just like with every job too, like even after this internship, wherever you go into the professional work sector, after graduation, hard work, it like perseveres, and it'll lead to bigger things. But you just have to kind of like just be strong and do your work with all that you got. And also, I just wanted to add on, thought of it when Julie was speaking, but now I kind of forgot. So if I think of it, I'll come back.
So thank you. So I didn't tell them I was going to ask them some questions about their personal experience. So this is their warning for the next 5 seconds, a little bit. So what I'm hearing then is when you're an intern, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of strictness in terms of presence, professionalism, appearance, but there also sounds like there are some challenges that you overcame as well. What were some challenges that you experienced either as an intern or internship director? How do you overcome that? And what's something that you would offer to the group as a source of wisdom?
you're right, I have experienced some challenges. I think that, yeah,
It's not a tea.
I think that from the intern standpoint, so from my personal experience, sometimes staff's running around, they're trying to meet deadlines, they're staffing a member, so you might feel like, not that you're getting busy work, but you might feel like, ooh, there are ways that I could support without overstepping. I think that you can be a really key asset to a staff team without being, the loudest person in the room. You can really stand out without being that person asking a million questions. I think the key to doing that is just kind of being on the sidelines and listening and being really observant and being really self-aware. So if you see those holes and see how maybe you could support, sometimes without asking, and I'm not saying like step over your intern coordinator's sort of boundaries, but sometimes let's say you see that it's a daily task that they do that they haven't gotten to that morning, and you know and understand how to do that task. Sometimes the little things that really count and they'll remember. So in my personal experience, I had noticed that staff was running around and that I wasn't being challenged because they didn't have the time to maybe give me a task list of different things that day. So I kind of just observed my surroundings, looked at what I was trained to do, and tried to support them in that way. And it, I think, ultimately really worked out in my favor because I stood out to them. Because I wasn't kind of in their face asking them like, hey, do you need to do something? But rather I assessed how I could help and how I could kind of respectfully insert myself as part of the team. In terms of challenges as an intern coordinator, from the intern side, I've noticed that sometimes interns will come in and they're kind of scared to collaborate with each other. Like they're so used to just reporting to one person that questions that they might come to my door asking me, they already know the answer amongst themselves. So I always kind of ricochet them back to each other and say, you are a team here, you are each other's best resources, and sometimes other interns sort of have already been onboarded earlier. So a question that you might have, another intern that you work with might already know the answer to that. And like, I understand sometimes you don't have another intern with you and it's just yourself, but I can guarantee you that your office probably has some sort of intern manual, or there's no such thing as a manual where those sort of instructions are written down. That's why I always say carry a notepad or an iPad or something where you can take notes, because your first day notes might feel like, oh, I'll never look at these again, but those little questions that you really retain and the answers that you remember will kind of prove that you are a really competitive intern.
So kind of going off of Julie, I definitely agree with everything that she said. But to add on, as an intern, like collaboration is great. Like don't think of it as like, if there's multiple interns at the office that you're interning at, don't see it as like a competition and like how you have to compete and, oh, I need to get this done, this person's doing this, so I need to stand out more, do this. Like collaboration is key. Like at the end of the day, everyone is trying to get experience, and you never know, like when you go out into the work world, that person that you intern with might be in the same office and now you need to collaborate. So kind of just like maintaining peace and work together, collaboration is key. And as an intern, just from an intern coordinator perspective, sometimes what an office looks at is when you say you're gonna do something, just make sure to follow through. So let's say like you agree to come to work Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 8 to 3 o'clock, something like that. And then next week you decide like, oh, you can't go because you just don't feel like it, or there's just so much going on that you don't want to come in. Just be cognizant of like how your office operates. So what we do for our office interns is we kind of like have like a sheet where you have to log in your what day you want to intern, and you have to sign it. So it's like a contract just to make yourself more accountable. So if you want to change it, of course, like offices, they're flexible to your schedule, but not like always. So you kind of have to respect people's time, and if you want to take a day off, make sure to say it in advance. And if you're sick, make sure to also like send an email and a written email, because that's also professionalism. So even myself, when I'm sick, I have to write an email to the chief of staff as well as the case manager or the office manager to indicate that today I'm sick and unfortunately I can't come in. But if you just don't like show any of that, like let's say you just decide to not come in and you don't like have a written response, then that will look bad on you, because it's just like, well, why didn't you come to work? Are you okay? And it makes the office worry about you. So that's kind of something that past interns, a few interns, like we noticed that. So if you kind of are conscious of that, that would help you, and the office you will be in a better light. So yeah, that's something that.
So I think going back to like the interview process, so how many of you, when you were applying for your current internship, also applied to other offices? Right? You apply to multiple, you shoot out your darts, hoping to get one of them back, or I should say, frisbee, whatever. But you always you're encouraged to apply to multiple places because, you know, at the end of the day, the hope is that you'll interview with a few other places, get some experience, and then, you know, narrow down your decision. I think a key thing to note is that a lot of offices have staffers that are friends with each other, that have relationships with each other, that work very closely together. So if you try to be like sneaky in, you know, kind of applying to 10 different places, and then let's say you interview with 5 of them, and then you get 3 offers, and you kind of want to take all 3 offers, know that if you aren't transparent, somehow word will probably get around with, at least if it's a regional, you know, kind of congressional and maybe a state assembly office. It's not against the rules to apply to multiple offices, but I have witnessed a situation where I accepted an intern, that intern accepted our position and also accepted an offer in another office simultaneously. And so sometimes things like that arise. It's a conflict of interest sometimes. And so that person never told me until they started. They ended up interning not with our office. And so I think that situation was actually really avoidable, as long as, you know, maybe when I offered the position, they could have said something like, if I could request more time to deliberate, I'm considering other offers. That is actually something that I would have much more preferred, because you're being really transparent, you're communicating that you really want this offer, but you have other things to consider, and that, you know, you're gonna come back to me after deliberating on deciding which office is the best fit for you. Because we as offices, I don't think we take it personally when you choose another office, because then you open up another opportunity for another candidate, right?
I just have one more thing. So for those that are going to intern, maybe like are applying for another internship, or something to consider is when you're whatever office you select an intern, make sure you do research and know like why you want to intern for that office. Because sometimes, just for an example, like we just had a wave of internship applications, and so we're a congressional office, which means we work on federal related matters. But at the district office, something that is actually very interesting is we work on casework. Casework, and that means we work directly with constituents, and when they have an issue with, say, immigration, veteran affairs, social security, we help them with those issues. But our office in Washington, D.C., they focus more on legislation. So some interns, they actually apply to the district office because they can't apply to the Washington, D.C. office. They want legislative experience. But at the district office, we don't focus so much on legislation. We focus on serving the constituents and going out to events to understand the community more. So if you do that prior research and you know what you want and you know what that office has to offer, it will make you a better candidate, and when you're in that when you're in that office, you will maximize your resources more. You know exactly what you want out of that office, so that you'll be able to do what you want, and then you will fulfill your goal. Otherwise, you come into an office expecting something else, and then they assign you something else, and you don't feel like you like your internship or there's any reward from it. So that's just something to consider.
So thank you so much for that. I want to open the floor a little bit for some questions. Being the first time, or maybe the third time, or maybe potential intern/coordinator person, what questions may you have? Wow, I really cannot talk right now. What questions do you have potentially? Oh, yeah, we come back there.
Hi, my name's Thompson. Thank you guys for being here. I was just curious, Angela, you're kind of hitting on just like getting a candidate that would probably look a little better. And I'm kind of curious on like, what are some of the things you look for in an application that makes somebody stand out? What are some things you might see and like probably not want as a fit for a candidate? And Juliana, I also have a question. You're also hitting on taking what you learned from the internship and going other places. And I was wondering what skills do you think are transferable in your office?
That's a lot of questions right there. Hopefully we caught most of that, right? Okay. We'll start with Angela's.
Okay, so I'll answer the first one. So an intern applicant, what makes them stand out? When we look at an internship application, we kind of look for, first, education. We want to make sure our intern has a good education, and of course we want to offer opportunities to other interns that maybe not have like a really good educational background, but foremost we want you to be kind of like have that background so you will understand kind of like what is going on in the office, and kind of like that prior knowledge, we kind of require that in order to the work that you do, because we work with so many constituents and so many organizations that we kind of need you to have that standard in order to take you on. So education is key. We look for GPA as well, because a higher GPA versus like a 1 point something, that means that you are hardworking in school. So that means that what we think is if you're hardworking in school, you'll be a hard worker at an office as well. We don't want to hire someone on that is kind of like slacking, because we can offer that internship to someone else who wants it more and will definitely do more for the office. So that's something that we look at. And also, usually for our office, every office operates differently, but we require like a resume and a cover letter. So having like experience out in the community, because if you just have education, it doesn't show that you're involved. We kind of look at involvement, and it doesn't have to be a lot, because we understand that some interns, they don't have the opportunity to intern at a different office or in the community, so we don't mind to be the first internship that you have. But in your cover letter, we expect you to show keen interest, like why you want to intern at our office, and you should also show that you've done some research about our office and know what the member is all about. Like for example, Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, she's very passionate about immigration, also education and security. So that's something that you should kind of like highlight. And maybe like as an intern, are you interested in immigration? Perhaps you want to learn more about what the Congresswoman is like, she pushes for? Then we would love to take you on so like the Congresswoman could share some knowledge with you, and for the staffers in our office to kind of help and empower you too. Because at the end of the day, we want our interns to go out there and do bigger things. And we want to make sure we have something to offer, because if we have nothing to offer for you, maybe you have a better internship at another office, so then we won't take you on. So kind of showing you that your interests align with our offices and what our office can actually do for you, what you can offer our office, that's what we look at.
Thank you. Was it Thompson?
Yeah.
Thanks for your questions. I had to like repeat it to myself a few times so I didn't forget. So your question was, what characteristics are transferable, like I referred to earlier? I think that if you work in sort of an elected official capacity, you will learn or improve skills, such as public speaking. such as researching really kind of dense issues, specific pieces of legislation, to maybe really complex issues that don't have a solution yet. I also think that interpersonal skills, so whether you work in an intern team or maybe your office dynamic is non-traditional, those are some things that you could really apply anywhere. And I think proof of that is that you see staffers in many different offices that come from non-traditional backgrounds that also, there's no one trajectory to being a staffer for an elected official. Some people leave, right, and then they come back. And so I think that all those skills are really easily applied because kind of like how Angela mentioned, like we really look for strong writers, I would say. That's like one quality. If you work for any elected, whether you come in a strong writer or that's not your strongest suit, you will leave a much stronger writer than when you came in. And so that's something that you could apply strong writing skills to any, I think personally, any job. Professionalism, you learn how to be in the same room as maybe the governor or maybe the speaker of the house or maybe even the consulate general of China, you name it. So those are really, because when these people come to events, they don't want fangirls. They don't want people running up to them. They want to have a robust discussion with constituents, with community leaders, with future partners, right? And so I think that just being completely open to learning new skills, even if you feel like, oh, I already know how to talk in front of people. I already know how to look at talking points and deliver a beautiful speech. Come in like a dry sponge, ready to soak in, anything that staff has to offer, because that will be something that you'll be able to walk away with forever. And then just to add to your first question, I think that yes, I totally agree, having sort of like an educated background is really important. But as an intern coordinator, I actually also really look at sort of my non-traditional applicants. That stands out to me if I see, for example, I had one applicant who had 12 years of military experience, which is really different from my usual applicant. I usually get like high school students to undergrad to 1 or 2 years post-grad. That stood out to me, and that usually opens up an opportunity for me to ask, I notice you have a non-traditional background. Why do you want to intern in this office? Or a question I always ask is, there are 120 members of the California State Legislature. Why do you want to work for Assemblymember Evan Lowe? And if you can't answer that question, it's not that I don't see you as a competitive intern. I don't see our office as a good fit for your interests.
Thank you. Other questions from the audience? No? Really, this is one of you guys, I was going to call it, I was like, this is your first year for most of you and you have no question? That means you must be wiser than all this. Here you go.
Hello, my name's Dylan. Thank you for coming out. So you mentioned that you should know what your office is, how the office works to some degree. At least, like what you mentioned was the district office versus the DC office. So personally, when I went into my internship, I was unaware as to what exactly the office did. Like I did my research. They said that the City Hall Council is a legislative body for the city, but when I got in, it was all constituent affairs and not anything to do with legislation. So is there any way is there anything that resources where we can access really like more detailed information about this, or is it like best to maybe just call in?
Sorry.
I really like your question, Dylan. Thank you. I think that's totally like, you hit the nail on the head by saying like you did your research, it said the word legislative body support, and then you're working on constituent affairs. But I think something to note is you are a part of that legislative support when you work on constituent affairs. Because when you work on legislation, you know, at least at different levels, it's really important to know, like, who is that legislation affecting? Who are the support groups that your district office is gonna outreach to? And so similar to Angela's office, our assembly office has a state capitol office in Sacramento and a district office. And I think if you look on our website, it says very similar things like outreach, legislative outreach, support, capital, blah, blah, blah. And as an intern doing research, you might read that and be like, oh yeah, okay, I have a clear sense of what I'm doing. I'm gonna walk in and give legislative support, and then you're handed a letter to write to a constituent with like a transportation related issue. I personally would not encourage you calling the office. I think that if you just give it 1 week's time, you'll get a good sense of, you know, kind of what your day-to-day will look like. I think a really good question to ask in your interview is, what does a typical day in the office look like?
Yeah, I agree with Julie. And that's very true. Like at the district office, you kind of you understand what the constituents are advocating for and what issues they care about. Because at the end of the day, when our members go to Washington D.C., they are fighting on legislation for the community. So it's kind of like understanding at the grassroots level. I would say like the district office, we kind of focus more at the grassroots level and we work very closely with the community. But legislation, it kind of goes back to the community. And if, perhaps I agree with not calling, but if you know you have other friends that had prior internship experience, or you know of someone, I would say networking is a good start to kind of like understanding what's out there. Because when I was in high school, I remember meeting a lot of different people, and when you meet someone that they have an experience that's kind of like in your area of interest, you kind of ask them questions and keep them in your radar. So then when you are actively applying for an internship, perhaps you can tap into your resources. So networking is a good idea. And there's a lot of staffers out there that they previously had internship experience or they were affiliated with a poly. A poly would be a great way to kind of just like be connected with, and now you're connected to this network. And then a lot of times, like even now, so I actually didn't mention this, but I was in a poly. I was in the Youth Leadership Academy for my freshman year of college, and then my second and third year I was an intern, so I mentored other students. And then my first year working for Congressman Zolofker, I actually did a civic leadership program. So I did like every single program that is offered by a poly, except for the one that's like for elected officials, because obviously I'm not running for office. But yeah, getting connected with like a network, I still tap into other Apolli like staffers or other Apolli alums, and I'm always in contact with them. And actually how I got my job for Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren is I connected with another Apolli alum, and she worked for Congresswoman Lofgren. She was her scheduler like 4 years ago. And then she went to grad school. But when I was interested, I knew I kind of had to have references. And I also knew that I needed to kind of be a strong applicant. So I kind of connected with her. I reached out to her. I was like, hey, I know you previously worked for Congressman Zoe Lofgren, and I'm actually very interested in applying for the similar job. And I just am a college graduate, and now I'm just wondering, do you have any tips and any advice on how like working for Congressman Lofgren is like and how the internship process is like? And believe it or not, she was more than happy to just mentor me and to guide me through the process. So making these connections early onwards, it will definitely help later onwards. So tap into your networks and start creating those networks.
Thank you. I just have to add on to this. When I first did the Poly program, everyone seemed to have been part of the Poly program, and also the common theme is when they were in the panel, it was very similar to this. And we're like, yeah, I know because of Poly, I got a job. Like what? And you realize that the network is very powerful. I mean, I got my job because the Poly was connected to CIUSA, and to Sandy Chow. Right? A lot of us got our job through the Poly Network, or someone who knows of us through the network as well. So that was kind of cool. I just wanted to just share that. I am not good at reading that clock because that clock is always off from mine, 2:05. One more question, maybe? One more? Oh.
Hi, my name is Vidya. I'm from Houston, and I really had a question about keeping everyone that you meet straight, because as someone working in like a legislative office, you meet a lot of different people, and like everyone from like constituents to people who work with nonprofits. And I was wondering if you had any tips on like how you just like don't mix people up and remember to like get back to everyone.
Thank you for that question. I think that is really key. When you're a staffer, your role is to serve the public, right? You're a public servant. Emphasis on the servant, I'm just kidding. But you're there to serve and give your 110% effort on behalf of the member or on behalf of XYZ. And so when you can't remember someone's name or their, where you met them for the third time, I think that speaks volumes personally. And so when I first started my position, it wasn't expected of me to remember, all 80 people I met that first week. It wasn't expected of me the second week that I had met them, but over time, it was expected of me to remember who are these people, what are their full names, their faces, how are they a part of our community, are they leaders, what is their relationship to our office, to our member, and how I honestly would keep track of meeting hundreds of people each week. Business cards are key, and so I would carry a pen with me and write on the back of the card where I met them. So if I met Anthony at an Poly mixer, I would write a Poly mixer and a date. And if I needed one more nugget, which I didn't need because Anthony has a huge personality, but let's say I was like, I can't remember, how am I gonna remember this person? Let's say Anthony and I talked about how he went to school in San Diego and how I'm from Southern California and how much I love sunny San Diego. I might have written down San Diego or SD. Little key points like that, you can be a human, you can write notes. A good, thing to do is to stay connected to people. So when, Angela says network, build your network, she doesn't mean meet 50 people and then never talk to them ever again. It's meet 10 people and cultivate relationships with those people. I think the quality of your network is greater, so much greater than the quantity. Right? If you can really rely on these people, so for my role as a field representative, we host a lot of in-district events. So actually just yesterday, Assemblymember Lowe hosted our Campbell Pride event. So we hosted a celebration where we honored local LGBTQ plus sort of leaders, and we also remembered those who aren't with us anymore, and we had gelato, and we also celebrated. But in order to do that, we needed to outreach to hundreds of in-district people so that they showed up to our event, right? And so I tapped into my contact book of, my physical book of business cards. I bought a little book from Amazon where I stick in those business cards that have those little notes. So I think, remembering those people and always, if you're concerned about, oh my gosh, what if I have their card and then I never see them again? If I met someone from Houston and I exchanged cards with them, the next thing I would do the next business day, I would email them a nice to meet you email. I'd say, hey, it was so nice to meet you. It was a pleasure speaking to you, and I really hope that our paths cross again, or I look forward to working with you sometime in the future.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Julie, and that's actually something that I do too. Whenever I meet someone, I kind of sometimes some individuals, it's like pretty easy to remember them, like their appearance, or maybe with your conversation, you had great conversations, and so you remember in your head like who they are. But sometimes if you don't, like writing the back of a business card is great, and then always follow up too. So you kind of like have them in your contacts. And then something that I do in addition to that is I also have like an Excel sheet, and I kind of like organize their names, their organization, and like how I met this person. And then if it's really hard for you, I would do just like extra research too. Like go online, and like a lot of people that you meet, like perhaps they might be a CEO of a company, or they are a really big organizer out in the community. So there's a lot of information about them online. So if you look up their profile online, and then perhaps there's a picture of them, I would just like copy and paste that to the Excel sheet. And then you have that list, because whatever internship that you have, creating that sort of like data for yourself is not only going to be temporary. You're not only going to use that just for the internship. It's going to last with you for the remaining years and into your professional years as well. And it can carry out. And I've come to understand that it's kind of like a small world. And when you run into someone, you might run into them again later on. So kind of just like establishing like a network and just like your own like little database in like Google Sheets, in like your Google Drive, that's like a really good start. So that's something that I kind of like needed, and I just wanted to organize like private company, public sector, and like the different people that I meet, because you're right, there's so many people out there and you will meet so many people. And there's no way to kind of like just remember everything. So I would start with kind of like creating something. And another strategy that I have, and I actually, okay, well that didn't put like any embarrassment on me, like I actually know his name now. And then you will forever remember his name and like not forget. And then something that my chief of staff actually taught me is, so when you meet people out in the community and you want to stay in touch with them, but you don't know how you can stay in touch with them, so like let's say like just be an attentive listener to the conversations that you have with new people that you meet. Because let's say Anthony and I, we have a similar interest in we like to advocate for the HVAC community. And then let's say something, like I sent an intro email to Anthony, like, hi Anthony, it was so great to meet you at this event, and I had a great discussion with you about the APAC community. I hope we stay in touch, and something like that. And then later on, like a few weeks pass, you notice something in the news, and you read something that could be of interest to Anthony. Send him an email. Say, hey Anthony, I read this article, I read this information online, and I think it could be of interest to you. Like, how great would that be, right? Because now, not only are you connected with this person, but you show interest that you have a similar interest to them, and you're actively kind of like just, they're in your radar. So that's another strategy that my colleague, my chief of staff, she actually taught me. And yeah, I would encourage just tapping into all the people that you met. Like, as an intern, all the staffers that you work with, they have a wide network. They've been working there for X amount of years. So trust me, they know like so many people in the community, and they know exactly who is who and which organization they're affiliated with. So as an intern, what you can do is if you are interested in someone and you don't know too much about them, feel free to ask the staffer like, oh, I met this person at an event, and I was just wondering, like, do you know more about this person? Like, they'd be more than happy to share with you, like, how your office is kind of like associated with that individual and the connections that you have. So that's something that I've tried to, and it's helped to kind of just understand more about who's important in the community and like what your organization or your office is really tied to. So yeah.
Thank you. So there's a giant dumb smile on my face right now because that's actually one of my techniques. Hopefully we'll keep this under 10 seconds. What is leadership excellence to you?
Leadership excellence is being a leader to yourself, and to be a leader for others, and always be committed to learning more and growing, because you can never be like a good enough leader. There's always more out there. So just crave that knowledge and always work on yourself to be like a better version of yourself, better than the person that you were yesterday. Just think of it that way, and then you'll be a really great leader.
Leadership excellence to me is being proud of your work, having integrity in the work that you deliver. So that means, not sending a draft with typos in it, but really putting in the time and effort and being proud of the work that you deliver. And going off the same thing is leadership excellence is always knowing that there's room for improvement and trying to be better each day.
Awesome, folks. Let's give them a round of applause.